Hello, Saints fans. So this is going to be the first bonus show that we're going to do during the, you know, I guess this would be the preseason or pre-preseason, whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. So we're going to try to do. Obviously, there'll be the post-game reaction shows. We're going to try to do a scouting the enemy matchup report every week during the regular season. There might be some other additional content. Um, Figuring out exactly how the content will be delivered. We may do a Patreon, we may not. Still figuring out some of that, just how we can make sure we keep the show up and running, and it's not all coming out of pocket. But if we get some donations or sponsorships, things like that, we might make it all free. Not the purpose of why we're here today, though. So this actually came as a result of some really interesting Twitter conversations recently that I had. And we were kind of talking about the crazy depth that the Saints have right now. So I wanted to take just a few minutes and really kind of talk it over of what that depth means, not just for this season, but for the organization as a whole. And, in the NBA, sorry, in the NFL, the gold standard is the Patriots, and you'll get some media dick writers. It's all Brady. It's all Brady. It's all Brady. Yeah, 13 points and 17 points and 14 points, and you're not scoring more than 20 in the Super Bowl very often. It might not all be you. It's the organization. The consistency comes from the organization. Consistently comes from the depth. Consistently comes from having a collective of parts and pieces that fit together to create a cohesive whole. And then having enough depth that if something happens to a couple of those pieces, as long as it's not a vital piece, you're able to backfill and replace it. Even if you're not able to get the same production, you're able to fill the same role and allow the machine to continue on. What I don't think has been talked about, especially nationally, but that's never a surprise with us, is that over the last 4 or 5 years, and really especially the last 3, the Saints have slowly started to put themselves in a position where they have the potential to do the same thing. What they're able to do now is have a team that's had consistent building, has developed over the last 3, 4, but really the last 3 years, identity on defense and on offense. The offensive identity has shifted a little bit, but is mostly intact because it's still Sean and Drew. But defensively, building a culture, building an identity, building out roles. This has advantages that goes far beyond just being a good team. That part matters, and we'll talk about that part a little bit. But first, I want to focus more on that dynastic side of things and keeping the momentum going, of not being a team that's hot for 2 or 3 years and then vanishes into the distance and all of a sudden is mediocre again. Really, not being the Falcons, where you're a great team, chokers, but they were a great team, had great performance, and then all of a sudden fell off a cliff and they were terrible. And a lot of it comes from that identity and that depth, and the two are very interconnected. So when you have an identity and you have a culture and you have that leadership and that consistency, it's a lot easier to draft well, because you're looking for types, you're looking for profiles, but you're also looking at specific skill sets. I don't just need to get the defense better. I have a good defense. So I don't need to desperately find every high upside playmaker that I can take a shot on and hope I hit. I can go, well, I've got a good free safety, I've got good corners, I've got a decent pass rush, but you know what? I need interior defensive linemen, and I really could use a good strong safety who can play in the box but can still cover. Or I've got a lot of speed on the defense, but a good tackling linebacker, good strong, whether it's a Will or it's a Sam or it's a Mike, whatever, linebacking spot, even if you're not looking for a starter. But if you're looking at depth, what happens if one of my guys go down? You're bringing in a type, a skill set. You're able to be a lot more specific in what you're looking for, which actually really helps you reduce the margin of error. Because you don't necessarily have to look at what a guy could be as much as, okay, but what is he already? Is what he is already in alignment with what I want him to be? Now, if he becomes something greater than that, great. That's awesome. We now have a star. But if he doesn't, it's okay, because he's a cog in an already running machine. That's the biggest advantage you get when you have depth and when you have that culture, is that you're able to take guys and replace them. Now, why does this come up? Because we've been seeing reports all over camp. Saquon Hampton is lighting camp on fire. I'm really looking forward to seeing him in the preseason to see if he can translate it to live games. Emmanuel Butler, for the first week before whatever nicked him up, was lighting camp on fire. Now it's Simi Cobbs. Rashard Matthews, I don't expect to light up camp because he's a vet. Vets usually don't. They wait for the preseason games. They pick their spots. They have enough proven tape. They really just have to show I still have it versus I have it at all, which younger players are showing. But the bigger point I'm getting at there, though, is you're hearing about all these guys, and what's the thing that you're seeing? You're seeing it on in chat rooms, on social media, and I'm sure in the media at large too. Well, what are they going to do with these guys? How are they going to keep Von Bell in the near future? How are they going to keep this guy? How are they going to keep that guy? What are they going to do with all these players? Well, that's the point. Maybe you keep Von Bell. Maybe CGJ. The rookie. Maybe he's a guy. Now, maybe he becomes your primary slot corner, but maybe he becomes a box safety. Maybe you move over to a 3-safety set where you let Vaughn walk for good money, but CJJ, or CGJ, whatever, Gardner Johnson. I'm just going to call him by his name. It's easier. Maybe Gardner Johnson is the slot guy, but because he's got safety ability, he brings a lot of versatility there. You keep Hampton and you keep Williams, and you get all the advantages of the 3-safety set, but because Gardner Johnson is a really good tackler, you don't lose what you would have from a safety, but you get the benefits of a corner. There's a lot of potential there. Maybe you don't. Maybe you let Williams and Bell walk. Hampton is the new guy. Gardner Johnson plays the interior. You bring in a different slot guy. That's also an option. And that's the key word. You have options. One of the biggest reasons the Saints went 7-9 several years in a row, other than literally having some of the worst defenses in the history of football, but how did you get there? Because you got to a point from an organizational standpoint, from a roster building standpoint, where you no longer had options. We had to go with player A. We had to build with player B. We had to take spot C. You had 12 needs, not 2. So on the one hand, yeah, you can take best player available because everything's a need, but on the flip side, you're not taking as many sure things. You're not taking as many guys who fit a profile and a type that you want because you don't know what you want. Because at this point, you just want not shitty. And that impacts the evaluation process, the drafting, the roster building, the culture, all of it. Now, the 17 draft changed everything. You got Anzalone, you got Lattimore, you got all these good players. Even the year before that, they started to slowly turn things around. You got Onyemata, you got Pete. You start getting guys to build on. Well, now Pete might move on. He might get big money. Okay, well, you have Easton there, who can play left and right guard, kind of can play center. All he has to do is prove that he's solid at guard. Then you can let Pete go. You already have Easton in the building. Maybe you get a comp pick, maybe you don't. Maybe partway through the season you trade Pete. You get another piece because you lost a guy. I'm not saying do that. I'm not recommending it. But again, the point here is you have options. You want to know the biggest secret to the Patriots' success and sustaining it? They always have options. Bill Belichick builds for tomorrow. You try to win today, but you build for tomorrow. You want to have as many options so that I'm never stuck with an A-B choice. Hey, I have to keep either player A or player B, and that guy has to be the guy. Well, no, I've got players A, B, C, D, E, sometimes F. I'm going to keep 3 of them. Somebody's going to win, someone's going to be depth, someone's maybe going to be the developmental guy for the future. If someone blows up, great, I've got another star. I'm not a great successful player, but even if one doesn't, I've got solid players because I was at 5 that I had to choose from, and it was a hard choice because I had options. So whichever ones I pick, I know I'm getting solid players. And the NFL, probably more than any other sport, really is a sum. The sum of the parts are greater. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The unit as a group is what matters. Having stars, it's not like the NBA, where a LeBron James can take 15-win team to the finals because his individual talents are so great and he elevates the team around him and yada 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 yada. Or, a Kobe Bryant can score 60 points in a game, or a Zion can make an entire franchise relevant media coverage-wise because of the hype and a bunch of other things. You can go down the list. It's different. The NBA is a star-based game. The NFL isn't. The NFL is a team-based game. We have now built a culture. We have now built a winning program. We have now built depth, which means the Saints now have options. And as a fan, there's nothing that could make me, as just from a long-term perspective, happier than knowing you've got Hampton, you've got Gardner Johnson, you've got Butler, you've got Coates, you've got all these guys that are at least showing flashes. They might be good players. They might be good fits for your system. Are they stars? Not necessarily. Probably not. But you're not expecting them to be. Can they be good enough? Because when you get a bunch of guys that are good enough, now you have, the word again, options. I can go make a trade to get a star. I can go take a draft pick and go, I want a stud offensive player. I want a stud pass rusher. I'm going to package 2 or 3 of these and go get that guy, and it doesn't negatively impact the integrity of my team because I've got solid to above solid players everywhere. I've got depth. I have options. That's why you can see Belichick constantly gamble. We're going to trade down. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to go get this guy. We're going to sign this reclamation project. He doesn't hit at any higher rate than anybody else in the league. He doesn't. He fails all the time. Guys sign there all the time. Oh, the Patriots are going to make him turn around. And then they don't. The vast majority don't, because the vast majority of those projects don't work out. But the key is he has the flexibility to take the risks because for him, they aren't risks. They have options. They have depth. The Saints are now putting themselves in a position to be able to operate in the same way. You can even look at it with the Drew Brees, Taysom Hill, Teddy Bridgewater trio. Now, Taysom Hill's a nice gadget player. There is a limited chance that he becomes a starting caliber NFL quarterback, but it's not zero. Teddy Bridgewater is definitely a starting caliber NFL quarterback, but is he a winning, real championship contender type quarterback? We're not sure, but maybe. But having those two as the guys behind Drew gives you options. It gives you the ability to go, okay, well, Bridgewater might not be, but if we put studs around him, post Breeze, if we add to a Michael Thomas, if we add to the offense, keep Kamara, add to Mike, get one more premier playmaker, and all of a sudden he looks great. Guess what? That's what the Falcons have done with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is not a spectacular quarterback. He does some things quite well, but he's not. Take the Saint, hatred of the Falcons aside. I'm sorry, he's not an incredible quarterback. But you know what he is? He's very, very solid, and they have blessed him with enormous offensive talent around him. And he's able to use that talent. Versus you look at a guy like Eli, who even when he had great talent around him, still looked like crap. Because Eli's a massively overrated quarterback. Guess what? Doesn't matter. The team won with him. They built enough stuff. Now, they also got 2 lucky years, and we're not going to go into that. But the point being, the Saints' current roster depth, the options that they have, the number of names we're hearing, all of this is good. I'll also, temper all of this saying They haven't played a preseason game. Camp Warriors appear every year. Training Camp Superstar every year. But instead of being the pessimistic, same old Saints type fan, keep this in mind. The Saints are now a winning team. So a guy making tons of plays in the passing game in camp means something when he's making those plays against one of the better defenses in the league. Not the best, but definitely one of the better defenses in the league. A defensive player making plays consistently against one of the best offenses in the league. No question, they're still one of the best. That means something. So I'm not going to poo-poo it and say that these guys making plays and showing out means nothing because it's camp and we haven't seen them in live coverage or live snaps or any of that. No, it matters. It means something, but it means a lot more now that they're doing it on a good team. It matters more. They still got to go out and prove it. But this is great news for us as fans because it means not only does the team have, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into this in a minute, they have a better chance to win this year. But the odds are so much better to have continued success, or at least not being in the gutter, post Drew Brees, because you have a good roster. You have a built culture. You have depth. You have options. And when you have that, you have the ability to take smart gambles without major penalty, which eventually leads to you hitting something. If you could get the same winnings from penny slots as you could from playing, $5 a roll, you'd always play the penny slot because it costs me less. If I could get the same payout every time as playing the more expensive one, why would I ever play the more expensive one? Same concept here. The better your roster, the deeper your roster, the more clear your identity, the more defined you're able to make your prototypes, the more likely you are to hit on a gamble because you're able to be more refined in your search. Now, all that's the future talk and just talking about the depth and all that. But what does this mean for this year? And again, this could change throughout preseason. This could change over time. But here's what I know. The Saints have an aging, but not aged, quarterback, an immensely talented offensive line, the best running back in the NFL, a top 5 receiver, a top 5 tight end, what looks like might be some decent young depth at receiver, a top 2 or 3 pair of corners. If Eli Apple is getting consistent, which is from every report in camp, he's played very consistently. If he's consistent and comfortable, he has top 8 corner in the NFL ability, no question. You've got good safeties. You've got good linebackers. You're one of the toughest teams in the NFL to run against. Yes, that matters. I know all the statistics say you don't need to establish a run, and they're right. Statistically, you don't. However, the ability to take away the run, extraordinarily important. When you're able to make your opponent essentially one-dimensional, it's easier to also cover the other things because you now know what's coming. Look no further than the Super Bowl. The Patriots took away the running game, and they made Jared Goff have to make decisions. And Jared Goff missed wide-open guys all day long, and Tom Brady got a 6th ring, which Tom Brady had almost nothing to do with. Got bailed out by Edelman, and Goff missing wide-open guys all day long. Well, again, teams win. That's why in separate rant, but ranking the greatest players based on the number of championships they win in team sports will forever be the stupidest thing we do as fans. It is the single dumbest argument. It drives me up the wall. I'll never get over it, but I'm not going to go into it here. For what it means for us this year. Well, if you have depth, let's just say Hampton is what we think he is. Is he going to take Marcus Williams' spot? No. I know there's this stupid narrative through part of Saints Twitter that Marcus Williams didn't have a good year last year. Guys, I love you. You're idiots. He wasn't Ed Reed. We got way overhyped on our expectations for him based on how he played in training camp and all the workout videos and all that. He wasn't being put in coverages where he had opportunities to make plays. Was he perfect? No. Did he regress? Maybe a little, but he was also spectacular as a rookie. Did he have a bad year? God, no. And that's just a dumb take if you think he did. Sorry. Bell played great. The linebackers played great. Anzalone's now had a full healthy year. And here's another thing about that health thing. That's something that can stack on itself too. And the same thing for Armstead. Even though he got a little nicked up last year, it wasn't the same. He didn't have a catastrophic structural injury. He got nicked up. Big difference, which means he got nicked up, he gets to go into the off season, he gets to rehab, then he gets to work on his body, then he gets to get in better shape, then he gets to get in, he comes into the season in better shape, in better condition, with fewer nagging injuries, which means that he's more likely to be able to endure the rigors of the NFL for another year because he doesn't have those things. Same thing for Anzalone. He didn't have to spend a whole offseason rehabbing. He got to spend it training and building instead of rebuilding. There's a big difference there. It matters a lot. So you've got depth. Now, the linebacker's the one spot I don't think we have depth on the defense. I think we've got depth at depth at defensive tackle. We have depth at defensive end. It's not great depth, but it is functional depth. It's okay. It's solid. And you've got two studs at defensive end, which means that the margin for error for your depth is better, unless one of them gets hurt, which, again, key player injuries hurt any team or any unit. They always do. If you lose Cam Jordan, the defense dies with him. Almost definitely. He's that important. But you have okay depth at defensive end. You've got solid depth at defensive tackle. I'm a lot higher on defensive tackle than some people are for us. And that's even before Rankins comes back. If he comes back and looks like himself, I think our defensive line is going to be incredible. The latter half of the year. But linebacker's the one I worry about. Our depth at linebacker, unless Beagle is something that, I don't think he is right now, but again, that's what the preseason's for, to see these guys with live snaps and live bullets. We can't afford for Anzalone or Davis to get hurt. If either of those guys get hurt, we're in trouble. If it's Davis, it's big trouble. But even without Anzalone, we're in trouble. The defense, you losing that speed element in the first 10 yards, first 15 yards, that the area where linebackers dominate, it is extraordinarily impactful. But other than linebacker, there is at least decent, solid NFL depth at every position on the roster. The only reason I'm including wide receiver in that, by the way, is because Matthews. Matthews' floor is solid NFL veteran who contributes a little bit, makes plays when you need him to, and isn't a negative. I think Kirkwood has shown that he could be solid. I think Smith is, he's a player. So you have Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn, who you can rely on. Smith, who at least can do some things sometimes, and he'll draw respect. Matthews, who I do think will make the roster just because he's a veteran, he's proven, and he's a really good fit for the offense. And then you've got two guys, Coates and Butler, who could both be really, really good. And I'm very high on Butler. I really hope that he's healthy enough to play in the preseason game on Friday. But you have these guys. The guys that we're looking at as maybes, fringe NFL players, are the fourth and fifth guys in that unit. Fourth, fifth, and sixth. That's a good thing. That means you at least have okay depth. And if one of those guys is what we think they are, especially in this system, which is a very wide receiver-friendly offense, it's much more about being in the right place at the right time than it is just beat your man one-on-one. Being able to beat your man one-on-one is extremely valuable. It always is. But if you can just be at the right spot at the right time and catch the damn ball, you're very, very valuable. Tight end, we're solid. Everywhere else, you're solid. You have depth. That's how you're able to win. So that when guys get nicked up, when guys get beat up throughout the course of the season, sometimes instead of having a guy play through something relatively minor and it getting worse, sometimes you're able to either reduce his snaps or just take him out, put in another guy who plays well, and then at the end of the year, when you need that stud back, he's able to come back fully healthy and make a real impact. Now, again, we're being very hypothetical here, but this is the value of depth. So just as a camp observation from all the hype, from all the things we've talked about, again, all of this started from that conversation that was in and observing on Twitter about the Saints' depth and all these moves, and good God, I mean, this guy could go here and that guy could go there, and what we would do with this, and it's like, this is a wonderful conversation to be able to have because we have so many options, and none of them are bad. None of these are Craig Robertson is your starting linebacker. And again, we love Craig. Craig's an amazing special teams player. He's a fantastic leader. He's a locker room guy. He's great depth. But you don't want him as your day one starter. He's not a starting caliber player. That's okay. He's not your starter. He's your depth. That, again, has value. So, we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap this up for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to look us up on the iTunes. Saints Nation, sorry, not Saints Nation, old habit. The Busted Coverage Saints podcast. I had to add Saints because there's another Busted Coverage podcast. Give us a 5-star review, pretty please. Helps more people see the show. If you do give a 5-star review and you have something you want us to cover, like I said, during the regular season, we're definitely going to be doing some mailbag shows. Anybody who leaves a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Podbean with a question, those will be prioritized. Although you can also tweet the show at Busted Coverage Podcast, BSTDCVG Podcast, or tweet me directly at Kira16. Like I said, I'll try to get to you guys' questions as soon as we can. We will do some mailbags for it. The more questions we get, the more frequently we'll do mailbags. Hope everybody's enjoying it, and can't wait to see some actual Saints football, even if it's pretend football, on Friday.